One of the greatest parts of our ministry is when we get to hear little parts of people's stories, God stories, the but God moments in our life where we were once in a bad spot, but God showed up and did something special. And today is one of those days where we get to hear from a sister in Christ that's a part of this beautiful ministry that is Celebrate Recovery, and hear a part of her story that I pray will bring you some encouragement as we celebrate Life Change Story today with our sister Tyra. Welcome to Celebrate Recovery Official, a podcast that shares life change stories, courage, hope, and leadership wisdom, all centered around the Beatitudes of Matthew chapter 5 and the Celebrate Recovery principles where Jesus helps us. He gives us language and a toolbox of how to face our hurts, our hang-ups, and our habits so that we can ultimately face our relationships and walk in healthy community with God and each other. To really find our purpose in our pain so that we can celebrate our recovery. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the Global Field Director of Celebrate Recovery. And as always, it's so good to be back with you today. Thank you for the traction that you guys are giving us in this space to reach more people, your reviews, your high 5-star rating, and just sharing it with friends helps us a lot so we can reach more people. That's what it's all about. So excited. We've been working on trying to get my sister Tyra on the podcast. We've met at a training conference and just connected and hearing parts of her story. Just wanted you guys to hear that. And she has been gracious enough to come on and share a part of her story. Never enough time to share our full story, but at least we'll get a taste of that, and maybe it'll bring some encouragement to you as our listener. But Tyra, welcome. So glad that you're here with us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and introduce yourself the way you do in CR, and we'll jump into a conversation.
Okay. My name is Tyra. I'm a faithful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with mental illness, codependency, perfectionism, PTSD, and food addiction.
Hey, Tyra, glad you're here. And I want to give you a shout out. Tyra is also ministry leader at CR Centralia in Southern Illinois at Nazarene Church. You guys meet on Mondays at 6 p.m. And I know they would always love to have you join them. So check them out. Go visit them on a Monday night at 6 p.m. there in Southern Illinois at CR Centralia. And so Tyra, just want to jump in here. Give me kind of a snapshot. Obviously, you're a ministry leader in CR, so we know some things have changed, but a lot of people don't know your story. Where was life for you before CR? Can you kind of give us a snapshot of your life that would bring you into Celebrate Recovery? What was your world like then?
So, do you want me to start in my childhood, or do you want me to start
wherever you feel comfortable, just so we can kind of, if our listeners are kind of checking this out, what give us a snapshot so we can appreciate where you are today. What was growing up like? What was your life like, Tyra?
Okay, so I was raised by my mom, who was emotionally distant. And she was married to who I thought was my dad. They got a divorce when I was 2. And then she married my ex-stepdad. It's weird. I had a lot of stepdads. But the first stepdad, he beat her, and I saw that. And he also beat me, but no one saw that. And so I was home alone. I was the baby. I had 2 sisters. My mom was always at work. And I remember we used to have to call my grandma to come get us because, he was belligerent or whatever. And, or we would run across the street to the neighbors. And I remember feeling unsafe all the time. And neglected. My sister said that I used to just crawl around in my diaper, and just by myself. So basically, my sisters raised me.
Wow.
And my grandma. I saw a lot of abuse. My sisters were not abused, thankfully. They went to school, but I was at home alone. And I didn't tell anyone because he would threaten me or whatever. And she had OCD, my mom. And so when they finally got divorced, I think I was 6 years old. She brought in about, I don't know, 20, 30 different boyfriends. She would always tell us that if she got married, her husband would be more important than us.
Wow.
So there was that, feeling of inadequacy. And then my real dad, I saw maybe 5 to 10 times up until I was in my 20s. So he was kind of a deadbeat. So I remember wanting to please everyone because my sisters would tell me they hated me. My oldest sister used to smack me around, just because I was in her way. There was a lot of resentment because I was the baby. So I feel like nowhere that I was did I feel safe or wanted.
Yeah.
So I used to, yeah.
Well, and just, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it kind of hits me, that's a lot for a little girl to endure, right? I mean, just right out the gate, just a lot there, kind of a disconnected, unresponsive, parents. Then you bring in a lot of unknown men into the relationship, right? The home, and they're not healthy, and then you have these messages from your mom. I mean, that's a lot to take in. And you mentioned the people pleasing. It actually, and this is why when we talk about the good reasons why we may be doing in the way we are today, it makes sense for that little girl that she was a people pleaser, because everything around her is saying, if you don't keep people happy, no one's going to be there for you. And even then it was messy, right? But I just wanted to lean into that it makes sense why that little girl developed these strategies of people pleasing, even though they don't work for today, and you working through those and changing that. But just honoring the good reasons why that little girl would even become a people pleaser. I didn't want to miss that, because that's a lot. It makes my heart sad and heavy for that little girl having to take all that on and really fighting for herself. It just kind of hit me when you were saying that, how big that is for that little girl.
Yeah. My grandma was my safe place. I remember she used to rock me because about age 3 or so, I developed insomnia, probably PTSD. But
makes sense.
Nobody knew why I didn't sleep. And my mom used to get so mad at me, but it was trauma. So when we say my grandma, she used to have to rock me for hours because I just would be up and down. And I was afraid of the dark. I remember one time I went to my mom and said, I see something in my room. There's something in my room, and she told me to get out. And
wow.
So I used to sleep with the covers over my head, just to feel safe. However, ironically, we did go to church every Sunday.
Wow.
And church camp and all those things. So I actually loved God. I loved church. I loved Vacation Bible School. I loved it all. And I fell in love with my father, because I mean, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I think it wasn't the same impact as I have today at being a
Right.
Christian.
Yeah.
And it didn't sustain because at age 12, my mom sat us all down and said, I have something to tell you. And we were kind of used to that, but my sisters had always made jokes about, oh, Tyra, you're adopted. Tyra, your real dad must be African American because you have, the name and the features. It was just all kinds of crazy.
Right.
They just cut me down consistently. And so my mom said, I I want you to know because their dad is their real dad. Um, but he would say, I'm gonna show up and never show up. I call him crying, please come get me. I want to stay with you. Never show up. So she told us that, Tyra, you have a different dad.
How old were
I had a
you?
one night 12.
12. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. She said, I had a one night stand. I don't know his name. I was drunk. And your dad is not who you thought it was. And I remember my oldest sister saying, I knew it. I hate you. Then my middle sister was like, well, what does that mean for her? And she was upset for me. Um, but I was in shock. I
Of
didn't know. I
course.
didn't cry. I didn't, I just sat there, I think, for a while. And then I went outside and listened to my worship music. That's what I always did to escape.
Wow.
But everything that I ever believed in, I realized was a lie.
That is a lot.
Yeah. So at that point, things just started getting different. I I was a dancer my whole life, a ballet dancer, a gymnast. And one day I was picked for the part in the Nutcracker. And I was so excited. I went back the next day and my teacher said, well, we picked someone else. You're too big to be lifted. And so then I started restricting my food.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So in this is 12, this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this news. Oh, I don't know who your dad is, right? I'm different from my siblings. Just the lonely, I'm guessing lonely, kind of a helpless, hopeless place. And then now you have these narratives coming out of, the way you look, the way you are is not enough. Ugh.
Yeah.
So
It's
now,
like one thing right after another.
gosh, I mean, any one of those by themselves would be enough, and they're just stacked on each other. I mean, that's incredible. So you're getting this message now, you're too heavy, that kind of thing. And this, I know food struggles is a big part of your story. So how did that impact you? You said, you started kind of focusing on your diet. What did that look like? Kind of give us a glimpse of where you kind of just realize, oh, this is a problem.
So I already was one of the skinniest people in my class. I mean, so that right there, from what I see now, I needed control. Nobody in my family coped. We just shut down or repressed. My mom would get mad if we would get emotional at all. Everything had to look perfect. We had to smile perfect. We had to dress perfect. And I was just restricting. But then my mom met an older guy, like 20 years older. And we had all had it with the guy thing.
Yeah.
And she decided he was going to be our new dad. And we were moving. And then I started just starving myself. I just didn't know how to cope at all. And I had no control. Wow. And my sister said, if you marry him, are we going to be first or what? Because you're moving us out of our childhood home. You're moving in really quickly. And she's like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to pick him. You think I would pick you guys? And so then I just started strictly starving myself. And then in high school, I started freshman year. I completely starved myself. And then sophomore year, I learned how to become bulimic from a health video of all places at school. And I dated really just messed up people. Wow. Who were abusive, of course, because that's what I thought I deserved and that's what I thought was normal. But, you know, I would say to myself, I don't drink, I don't drink with all the other kids. I don't smoke pot. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't do any of that stuff. But I'm starving myself to death,
Yeah. Did
irony.
It feel, well, at least I'm not doing that. Maybe this is not that bad. Was that kind of the narrative? I'm trying to get in that heart of that little girl.
Yeah, kind of an addict thing. Like, well, I mean, I can do this. I don't have to do it that much. And all of you are doing things that are worse than me. Yeah. It's so crazy.
But it makes sense, right? I mean, it's confusing because I'm guessing not a lot of people were talking about that struggle a whole lot in your younger years. So it feels very lonely. I'm alone in this. Nobody's there for me. I've already heard my safe people or the people that should be safe telling me I'm on my own in essence. And so I certainly can't bring this struggle to anyone. And so you're just trying to kind of white knuckle your way through that and just try to manage it. What is that looking like?
So it got out of control because you could tell I'd been throwing up. There were signs, physical signs, and the starving. I was wearing, when I was 15, it all came to a head because I was out of control. I mean, I always was, but I couldn't stop. And then it became obsession with, well, I just need to be this weight and I'd get that weight. Well, I just need to lose a little more. And I would walk and run laps in our yard in the morning, in the afternoon after school, in the evening. My mom's a nurse, thankfully. So she kind of picked up on it right away. So she got me into therapy and a psychiatrist. She did everything. She sent me to a treatment center. But the thing is that she was a codependent. So she felt guilty. She would listen to me when I'd say, well, I just need to, they're mistreating me here at the treatment center. So ridiculous.
Yeah. Any excuse will do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They were actually trying to help me, and it was a beautiful horse ranch, a mansion, but that fear of change and gaining weight was just overwhelming. And nobody had any way to be like, hey, here's how you can cope with these things. But then again, I hadn't told them yet. I still hadn't told them all the bad stuff that had happened.
Right.
And my first boyfriend raped me. I didn't tell anybody any of this stuff until I was in my mid-20s. And I said I haven't told my mom all of it because it would hurt her.
Yeah, you were trying to protect her. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tyra, you know, and yeah, so much here. So you're in your mid-20s, you know, you've been carrying these secrets, you've been carrying this pain, you're alone, the struggle, mom's trying to get you some treatment, but extremely codependent, you know, it's not really sitting. At what point did this become kind of the breaking point in your adult life where it was time to do something? What was happening? Give us a glimpse of that, kind of that bottom, as we say, in your life.
So I started to get a little better. And I went to a Christian university. I met a Christian youth pastor. We got married because, see, I was trying to run. I was trying to run away from my family life. And I thought that would fix it. I thought, well, you know, we have to get married because that's what people do. And what if he leaves, you know, or I have to do this because I don't want to go back home, or I'm trying to find a dad, basically. And then we ended up getting a divorce because I wasn't ready for that, you know, and I was still sick. I started getting migraines because my bulimia had gotten way better. You know, I would still yo-yo diet and restrict, but I wasn't in that mode per se. I was just tired of it, you know.
Wow.
But they put me on injectable morphine. So then I got addicted to that.
Wow.
Which then led to they stopped prescribing it all of a sudden. They didn't wean me off. That led to snorting heroin, which then led to injecting heroin. And then that was a year and a half of that. Because I'm like, we got a divorce. Even God doesn't want me now. You know, those lies that the enemy tells you. Yeah. And I had a lot of people that loved me. They did an intervention.
How old were you in the intervention?
I think I was 21, 22.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, whatever, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, of course. But it was a seed planted. And then I ended up getting to that rock bottom. And my mom was like, get in the car, we're going to NA, you know? And she's like, if you don't, I'm kicking you out. So finally she stood up and she's like, no more.
Yeah.
And it saved my life.
Wow.
So
praise God for
I went
that.
to NA. Yeah, I went to NA, never used again. That was 17 years ago. But I went from starving to overeating.
Yeah. So we kind of shift our addictions, don't we? To drugs, to overeating, undereating. So at what point, Tyra, there's a lot to unpack here, and we have limited time and just trying to get a snapshot here. And I appreciate how vulnerable you're being. You're doing such a good job. I know, blessing our listeners. At what point, when did Celebrate Recovery come into the picture for you that, okay, there's some underlying things here. I've been able to manage some stuff, but some things are rearing their ugly head. At what point did Celebrate Recovery enter your life, and what did that look like?
So I already had my first son. I got pregnant with my second son. But my sister couldn't have children.
Mm.
And they tried everything. IVF. They put out several mortgages on their house. And then the doctors finally said, you'll never have children.
Mm.
And I was pregnant when I heard them say that. And I thought, what if I could give her this gift?
Wow.
You know, so I asked her, she was crying. She was so happy. And I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. So I ended up giving her my second son. I woke up in the hospital and I have never felt so awful in my entire life. Because I wanted to do it, but being pregnant for that long and then not having your baby
I can't imagine.
is, oh my gosh, it's, I don't regret it at all. But there's a grieving,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
yeah, and he has cerebral palsy. He's blind, he can't talk. And it's, but my other son's autistic and has all these other things. And so every once in a while, when I start to go down that road, I'm like, they can't even be around each other to visit because they overstimulate each other. So it was a God thing, and she's happy because she's a mom.
Yeah.
And so it's a blessing. But I went into a deep, dark depression when I got home. My son is my oldest son is what got me through it. Obviously God, but he would come in and be like, Mommy, don't cry. It's okay. Mommy, I love you. And he would just say that over and over and over again. And he would lay with me in that space and be there with me, even though I was so sad. My mom started taking him to our old church from when I was a kid because I was so ashamed to go anywhere. And he had a Christmas program, so I went. And I thought, they have CR here. And I had heard of it when I had started getting clean, and I had gone to the other one several years before. And the first Sunday I actually went to church there, that was my first step. I went to my pastor after church and I said, can you please pray for me? I have postpartum depression. I gave away my second son. He didn't know any of this. No one knew. But that also is a God thing, And he's like, yeah, of course. He's like, I hope you'll come back next Sunday. And then I saw the CR stuff. The CR actually came to us, to the church. And I thought at first, Mom, did you do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But they did Life Healing Choices. I did it with them. I met who would become my sponsor. And then I started going to CR. And of course, those warm, hey, how are you doing? Hey, oh, it's okay to be nervous, sitting in the back. And I decided after the first meeting, I want to be in a sub-study. I'm ready. I'm ready to deal with this because I can't do it alone. And I never stopped going.
I love that. Well, so I'd love to kind of lean into, if we can. I'm so glad that you found that church. I'm so glad that you found Celebrate Recovery and working the principles. I'd love to lean into, if we can, just for a few minutes here. How did Celebrate Recovery help you with, specifically with the food struggles? You did, depriving yourself, starving yourself to overeating, and just for our listeners that might be struggling with food issues, how did Celebrate Recovery help you address the roots of that? And what did that look like for you, Tyra?
So I did the step study, my first one. And I realized when I would go to small groups that other people would say food. And I'm like, really? You know? Um, but it wasn't until my second step study that I realized I had other issues. Like, what is codependency? You know? Oh, I have that. And then, of course, I knew I was a perfectionistic because I have to have everything a certain way. I have to look a certain way. And I'm like, well, that's definitely a problem. And then, of course, I knew I had struggled with mental illness. So I was in therapy. My sponsor said, do trauma therapy because, there's rapes in there. There's all these things. You gave away your son. And I finally listened to her. But so that all by itself, the PTSD, going to trauma therapy has helped with realizing that I talk to myself terribly. Um, oh, Tyra, you messed up again. Oh, nobody likes you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're this. And my counselor was like, you've got to stop that. Those are your automatic thoughts from trauma.
Yeah.
So that helped. And then I go into CR and I read my 4 steps, and my sponsor still loved me, you know.
Wow.
And so I realized it's not a one day and done.
Right.
It's this is a lifetime of unpacking these things and these repressed memories.
Yeah.
And also people at CR love me
Yeah.
no matter what. And they listen to me and I can tell them I overate today. And then I can say, okay, I need you to ask me how I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
And maybe the rest of the week.
Setting in some structure and I love that you said, Tyra, I mean, yeah, you're developing some strategies, you're loved, you're inviting people into a safe people. And I love that you made that point that it's not a one and done. I mean, sometimes depending on the trauma that we've gone through, that's what the sanctification process is. So it's just trusting the process and giving yourself some grace, showing yourself some kindness in that space, and trusting Him in that. That's amazing that God pointed you to that community and we're works in process, and just your vulnerability and letting us into that, and addressing the food struggle specifically, which feels like there was some other underlying things, codependency and the lies that you were believing about yourself that were kind of weaved in with the food struggles, just like any other struggle, right? Is just trying to identify that. That's so important for people or our listeners to hear that, especially if they're struggling with food issues. Tyra, what would you say to somebody that may be struggling? You've got a pretty significant story with a lot of trauma, and some people can relate to that, some not. But you walk through a lot of stuff. As somebody's walking through some stuff and they're just feeling that hopeless, maybe they're feeling alone. What would you, Tyra, this walk through a lot of stuff, what would you say to them directly to encourage them today?
Never to give up, never to try to do it alone. Give yourself grace because it didn't start in one day, so it's going to take a long time to sort it all out, but to, just keep going. And I would definitely recommend getting into Celebrate Recovery.
Yeah.
And for a sponsor and accountability partners, and for me, trauma therapy and service work and just different things like that. Also journaling positive things, to just tell yourself who you are. Or for me also, going into God's word and saying, finding the verses that he's talking to us, like, you are a child of God. You are loved. You are chosen. You are forgiven. All of those things.
I love that.
Yeah.
I me statements with the positive, right? I am loved. I am forgiven.
Yes.
Right. I am a child of God. I love that. What a great practical, and you're using that today, aren't you? I mean, that's part of your toolbox, and I love that.
Every day.
Yeah, every day, and it's just a reminder. No matter how long we've been on this journey, we need to keep working the process and this sanctification process we call recovery. And Tyra, just knowing who you are today and now a ministry leader, I mean, who'd have thunk it, right? That you would actually be leading a ministry in recovery. I'm sure that little girl that went through those significant traumas and even into your teenage years, if we were to go and talk to her right now, we probably would not hear, I'm going to be a ministry leader one day. But that's the beauty of God's miracles, right? You're a living miracle, and I thank God that he's done some significant healing, and you're still in process, but that doesn't discount the miracles that he's already done. And thank you for your courage to keep working your program and staying connected to the Lord and to safe community. You're an inspiration, sis, and I appreciate you for all that you do for the kingdom. But most of all, for what you're doing for yourself, you are worth it. And just so grateful that you're still on the road to recovery and experiencing some freedom there.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, Rodney.
Well, I know you've blessed our listeners today, and I appreciate you. There's so much more we could unpack, and maybe we'll get you back on for another angle of your story at some point. But thank you for specifically speaking into the food struggles, because it's probably one of those that can be probably not talked about enough and can be confusing, because we all need food, and it's a part of our lives, but understanding when it becomes unhealthy for us. So thanks for leaning into that specifically, but just sharing a part of your story. It means so much to me, and I know to our listeners. I know you've blessed everyone that's listening today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. And again, if you'd like to visit Tyra, see our Centralia in Southern Illinois at Nazarene Church, Mondays at 6 p.m., I know that they would love to have you. Hey, thanks so much for being with us today, Tyra.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope this has blessed you as much as it has me, and probably worth listening to this one a couple times. There's so much to unpack there, but I hope you hear loud and clear Tyra's words that we can't do this alone. And the enemy's convincing you maybe of some lies of how you are that are not the way Jesus sees you. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've been a part of, what you've experienced in your life, you're worth it. You are a child of God. You are forgiven, and you are so loved. I hope that you can take that into your heart. Hey, thanks so much for being with me today. I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you. Have a wonderful week.